depends. We're getting better and better. So let's have a look. Also here, we don't when it's processed, it will not be the final strength. Yeah, if it is completely sintered, it's very difficult and long to mill. That's why in the pre-stage we're looking at around 100 megapascals of flexural strength only. So if you drop the restoration, you will fracture. I did this once at the congress with an exhibition. I had this very nice zirconia bridge, circuit bridge, not yet sintered, just to show to some people. I gave it to a guy and I said, hey, but you have to be careful, it's not yet sintered, right? It's fragile. Of course, this guy dropped it onto the floor and of course it fractured in 1,000 pieces. And it had a very, very delicate margin. Yeah. So anyway, you have to look at, it has to be handled with care, especially when you really, really have thin margins that you don't damage or fracture it. So zirconia has a very specific property. It's called the transformation or toughening transformation. So usually when we have the zirconia, they are consisting of tetragonal polycrystals. So there's no glassy matrix, as you can see. Zirconia has no glassy matrix, that's why it's useless to etch them with hydrofluoric acid. But you start off with the tetragonal polycrystals. Now if you add energy to that system, I mean you have a crack energy that wants to propagate through the material, the tetragonal polycrystals can change into monoclinic along the crack and at the crack tip. Now these monoclinic polycrystals have a higher volume compared to the tetragonal ones, which is about 4.5%, and so the crack will be compressed and stopped. And that explains the high fracture toughness of the material. I told you that the fracture toughness is the resistance against the crack propagation, and this one is the mechanism that is behind this. Right? Clear? Right? So, and that of course offers, or that gives us the possibility to reduce the material thickness and the preparation depth as well. So let's say for the original circuit LT, which is a free Y TZP, we have 1,200 megapascals of fracture strength and more than 5 of fracture toughness. For the posterior will be 0.6 millimeters, and for the anterior crown it is 0.4 only. Yeah, so that's pretty conservative and good. But of course you know that any zirconium oxide restoration of course needs to be sintered to go from the 100 or 110 megapascals to the full 1,200 megapascals. We can do this with a new Programmat CS6. So now you can see the volume here before sintering and after sintering is 22% too large or larger. So what do you think about the fit? So we mill it too large, then we sinter it, it shrinks exactly by the same 20 or 23%, so that we have a good fit. So the software knows. Now they have actually launched another Prime, it's called Prime Aesthetic. So they have, in the cervical, they have not 3Y, they have 4Y. It becomes even more translucent also in this area. Of course here, I don't know, there's much benefit, but of course in that transition phase here, you get even more translucency, and that translates into higher aesthetics. So now, let me show you some case here. So you can see here, this bridge is all monolithic, no layering on the top, only staining glaze. You see the light is kind of penetrating here on the inside edge. So now, of course, on the left side we have a lot of discs now, but I would see you will probably see that some of these discs will be discontinued, yes, because the focus is pretty strong on those two discs, which are a good combination of strength and translucency and say aesthetics. So you actually have the prime, circuit prime, that's a combination of 5Y and 3Y P. That means 650 and 1200. And this one is called prime aesthetic. That's the latest one, the very new one. You have 650 and 850. That means 5Y and 4Y. So this is even more aesthetic in that sense. Okay. Yes? Yes. Okay, it's the only difference. Okay. So that was just a question about the MT multi, which is also 5Y and 4 and 5, and this is on the 4 and 5. It's a great technology.
Dentist, and you have certain credibility, and I was very clear when I first went. I mean, I've gone at different times and had the fortune of benefit of going to Liechtenstein, to Shanghai. I thought it was 2006, but Bapon insisted that he saw me in 2004. That's some time back. In that time, I think the company has been very good. They gave us rhetorical training. I think we're all dentists, but we all never were trained to publicly speak or communicate. All right, so one of the things I gained from it very much were going through the professional training with very good trainers like Margaret Clara, Wolfgang Koch. They're very European in their way, but they're very international. So to me, when I go out and speak, I know firstly I'm conditioned to be real. You have to reorganize the way you present. I mean, Michael did a lot of presentation. There's a certain look to an eyeglass slide. You know what I mean? You know the genes to it is an eyeglass slide. So to me, if you make a presentation, you have to make it your way. And at most, you extract some information and put it into your slide. So one of the best things I can give is that we come at different angles. If you're speaking at a scientific symposium or general meeting, your slant is as a speaker, probably a little bit more peripheral helicopter. You can talk about products, but usually a bit circumspect about it. Don't come across as a strong sales. I agree with Michael, you have to talk about certain features of the product. I always like to talk even about competing product as well, so it makes you feel, looks credible. If you run a workshop that is principally an eyeglass workshop, that's where you can be a little bit more focused, if I want to put the word, that you go straight for a product. You talk about marketing and then you talk about the features of the products. This is how I would use it, and this is my results and how you do it, and they give you inputs to it. I think we all have different ways of running workshop. I mean, I have young stars like Justin and Anthony that they have done fantastic workshop that I've seen in recent times, and I'm sure they do it their way, and they have their following as well. I mean, rightfully so, we're all individual. And so that's my take to it. And do your slides the way you would make it. What I learned, of course, is that have a roadmap. You go to presentation, even some very good ones, and there's a huge deluge of information. So if you're going to be an effective speaker, I think you need to organize it, have a roadmap. This is my introduction. This is what I'm going to do. This is my concluding. I think we went through those training. I think a lot of time it's just about maybe three points there. You follow those 3 points, and that's where will make a difference when we come out and people say, "Oh, this is a very organized talk. I learned something." Rather than I was just sharing Michael at the coffee that as dentists you go in to learn something. Or the other one is that it's so overwhelming, you'll say, "Wow, nice to look at, but I'll never be able to do that." I talk that as dental pornography. Dental porn, you look at it, wow. You just wow by it, but you never will get close to doing it. So I think they want to see some of that wow factor, but at least sometimes they want to see how they do it. So that's pretty much my input, which I won't eventually. And then, just reflect it, but that's my pet peeve as well. I try and stay away from a lot of direct comparison on drafts and all that kind of thing. You can do one or two, but typically most people get turned off after the third slide on strength, loss resistance, or whatever. So that's my input. Maybe. More distinguished. Around here, it looks like more like Steven Seagal now.
Thank you. Actually, DC already covered a lot of our feeling about I forgot now. But what I falling in love with Ivoclar because Ivoclar never pushed us to promote the materials, the products. Their product is too much because it's what we have to introduce is how we work like Michael said, how we make a good restoration and good treatment with some good material. That's all. And also, Ivoclar built me up from 0 to right now with theoretical training. I think it's already 15 years. Probably this is the most senior one. It is good, and then me, and Bailey, and also my trainer, Michael. Yeah, it's a Vulcan, mostly work. This usually we have a theoretical with Vulcan. He's a very guy, but he is a very talented teacher and also professional theoretical trainer in Europe. I believe Ivoclar pay a lot of the fees of the Vulcan, but he is very, very good. Probably you have to bring us to Vulcan another time. Okay. Thank you. This is our family of TTL because we are very bonus very, very high with Michael and veterans.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No, it's really, I mean, of course, we feel like one family.
Yes, correct.
It's true. I mean, it's really more than just a professional relation. And I hope you can feel for the new guys. This will be the way of working together. Actually, I hope so. I would like to make some remarks about the design of the slide quickly, because you have heard about the fonts and everything, and you see the new logo. I would recommend not to use the Ivoclar logo on your slide, because we're not expecting this. And I'm specifically critical for this kind of things, because now the company is pretty much changing. They hire a lot of communications managers. I don't know what they do with all these communication managers actually. I would be more happy to have a dentist in my team, another dentist, but they focus on the communication manager, okay? So, no, if you ask these guys, of course, they would like you to have this kind of pictures and frames and logos all over your place, but they are not into education. And so this would be way too commercial. So you can use whatever kind of background you use. However, when I started lecturing, it was all black background. So the fashion, the general fashion, I'm not talking about Ivoclar, is really changing also. So today we use more white background, for example, not so much black. You should not have a green, black, yellow background and then this all mixed together. So we would have more like a uniform, fresh, crisp look, I would say generally. And you can see the new branding guidelines follow that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that you need to use the same fonts and the same thing. But generally, what I would like to recommend is not to use text slides, because people, if they read it, they fall asleep, and if they don't read it, it's anyway useless if you have it. So you probably take a lot of picture, and you talk and explain the picture. I cannot give you, of course, a presentation training like we have all received from those guys in Shan. However, it's really good that you can kind of what they call interacting with the slide, yeah. But you don't have too much, let's say, written stuff, no words. Don't overload the slide. Have always a few items there, not too many. Have it all clean, organized, and as TC said, a roadmap is very important. It's also for yourself very important, because you will be clear of what kind of messages you want to convey, and you don't get lost in the details. So it's not only important for the audience that they can follow you much easier and more concentrated. It's also for yourself. You think of yourself, what is actually the topic I'm talking about? Because you will get opinion leader presentations. They are full of information. So you need then to pick the stuff that you really need and place it into your own presentation. So anything that, of course, we will not make too much pressure on you in terms of how much of the products you really want to should actually present. But it will be, of course, good to have a decent, let's say, amount of, there are some tips and tricks, to be honest. Let's say I'm at the Congress and I don't want to be too commercial, but I want to show the product. For example, you can show the product, but you're not mentioning the product. You just take, for example, you have this kind of category of material, and you have an Ivoclar product, or the other way around. You say, okay, here I have clinical cases, and I used tetric cat in this example. So you kind of can balance the amount of, let's say, sales orientation by balancing it. You know what I mean? And what I really like is, you say, okay, for this kind of clinical cases, I need this and this and this requirement. And some of especially the curing light, I like that. Actually, it works quite well. You say, okay, we need the best curing lights. Is a fourth generation LED light. But what we need is tight specification. We need polywave. Maybe we need polyvision technology. These are all proprietary Ivoclar technologies. So you can actually say this is very important for the clinical result, but you're not mentioning the product. So when these guys go out into the market, they say, hey, I need to have this kind of polyvision. And then the salespeople know, okay, that's a blue face. Okay. Just little tips and tricks, okay? You can kind of set the benchmark and say, okay, that's the technology that we really need. Then you have not mentioned the product, but the product will be automatically routed to Ivoclar. Okay, it's just a little thing. Yeah. So, anything else to add? I think you yes.
What if the whole procedure we don't stick to only Ivoclar products? Can we use other brand or product for certain procedures? Do we show it?
Yes, it's a very good thing. I also do that. It enhances the credibility. So, for example, I tell you straightly, frank away, there are some products which I don't like from Ivoclar, and I'm not supposed to openly say which ones. But it's in fact the phosphoric acid gel is really not good. So I use Ultra Edge.
Yes. And
then I show Ultra Edge here. I showed you a clinical case actually was Ultra Edge, because I think that's the best phosphoric acid gel in terms of the viscosity, for example. So I use other brands and they show it also. I think if my superiors see that, they will say, that's not very acceptable, but I don't care. Because I think there are other brands. I mean, Ivoclar has good products, but there are also other companies that have good products. So you can show that it will actually increase the credibility. And you say, okay, this and this here, I use this product, competitive product, and this and this and this here, I use that product, then you have even more credibility. It would be good if it's not like a very focused product of Ivoclar that you are not using in this case, of course. So it's good if it is kind of a side product, yeah, that would be favorable. But good point, yeah. So even, for example, when marketing managers see me presenting without the Ivoclar logo, they already they raise their eyebrows and look like that. So I'm the guy who is actually, even within the company, try not to be too commercial. Yeah? Because I want to brainwash myself anyway, also not. Because I told you, I work in a clinic which is independent of Ivoclar, and I'm using really the products that I think are most suitable. And sometimes it's not an Ivoclar product. At the end of the day, I must look into the mirror, and you too. When you lecture for Ivoclar, and you have lectured, and then you come back and say, hey, it's good. I actually delivered, I spoke from the heart because I'm convinced of what I presented. And that makes you also happy in long term. Okay, cool. I give back to the MC.